Hello and welcome. I'm Karen McNenny, author, mediator, co-parent specialist, and divorce consultant. And this is the Good Divorce Show, where we don't just talk about how to get divorced, but how to be divorced. Divorce is not a weapon, it's a tool. And when used well, it can be a tool for transformation. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Hi, friends. I thought today we could share a cup of tea and a little storytelling. I want to tell you about the Good Divorce book and how it came into this world, which is just happening as we speak. I'm going to set that down so I don't spill anything on my computer because that would be just like me. The very, very first seed of this book goes way back. And right now, my parents, who live in the same town as I do in Missoula, Montana, and still live in the house that I grew up in, but they are moving out right now, 55 years. So all sorts of things are being unearthed and unpacked and discovered. And this is one of them. This is a survey or an essay that I wrote in 1990 for the Miss Montana pageant. And if you want to hear that story, go to my YouTube channel and just watch Accidental Beauty Queen. And you'll find out how I accidentally became a beauty queen, because that did happen. But in the essay, they're like, what are you going to do in the world? And what's your platform? And how are you going to make a difference? At this point, I am 18. I'm a senior in high school. I haven't even been to college. I've barely been out of Montana. I've never left the country, but you know. So this is what I was able to say at that time in 1990. So that's 46 years ago. Is that the right math? That can't be right. You do the math. It's now 2026, and this was in 1990. Yeah, 36 years ago. So my father once asked me what my greatest ambition in life was. So this is what I wrote. My father once asked me what my greatest ambition in life was. I simply replied that it was to someday write a book that would be a bestseller. I explained this would be the indication that there must have been some excitement in my life, some meaning, that I had something to offer to other people, that they would actually take time to read my words. I don't know yet where I'm going to find my path or my success. I can only hope that the end result will be one that will make my parents proud and will make a difference in other people's lives. And then at the very end of the essay, I said, so back to that book. I look forward to writing about the experiences of my life and hope that they will also help others as they journey through their own. Chapter 1, ... Very dramatic. Well, I have always known there was a book inside of me. I didn't know what it was going to be about. I certainly never guessed it would be about divorce because, frankly, I never planned on getting a divorce because none of us do. And the next stepping stone in this journey was the pandemic, the great, powerful pause that we all went through. And I was doing only business consulting at that time. And I was presenting at a big leadership retreat for a tech company. And it was the first time, this would have been about 2020, that I used my experience of divorce, about 9 years post-divorce, to talk about leading change and transformation in the workplace. That's where it began. And at the break, one of the participants, this dad, comes up to me and he's all teary-eyed and he's like, oh my gosh, Karen, your message just really hit close to home. My wife and I are really struggling right now. We think we maybe just need to separate. Our rental's coming open. Would you guide us? And I thought, well, I don't know. I've never done anything like that. But I have some thoughts about what we did. And I had already, was a certified mediator. I do a lot of facilitation, a lot of project management. And that's kind of how I started to approach divorce. And I set out to support this couple. And I loved it. I was just following the breadcrumbs of really what we were looking for when we went through our divorce, which was a guide, someone to teach us not just some attorney to get us divorced, but literally someone to show us how to be divorced, like how to be a two-home family, which is how we've always spoke about ourselves as a two-home family. And in the end, they had a good divorce, and they wrote letters to each other when we sat down to write the final, sign the final documents. And it was tearful and it was meaningful. And I started to then Google divorce doula, divorce concierge. I just was like, is anyone doing this? Because if they're not, we should. And in the end, I ended up building the business that I was looking for all those years earlier when we got divorced in 2011. And then I found this in the unearthing, December 2021, the first time I wrote out the Good Divorce Coach. It's like, yeah, good divorce. We don't ever hear those two words together in the same sentence, but we should. And then I had this little subtitle, The Good Divorce Coach. It doesn't have to suck. True enough. True enough. I better clean my camera. So the Good Divorce movement for me started. I started to hang a shingle. I was still doing business consulting, but that was so quiet in the pandemic. There were no conferences. There were no teaching opportunities. We were all at home in our pajamas. And that's when I became a certified divorce coach and a co-parenting specialist. And my mediation work carried through, and I had trained as a therapist in grad school. So I was getting really excited about this new industry that I had found. And as one would have it, the next serendipitous moment came about, and I got a call from a radio podcast producer who found me online and asked if I was interested in producing a podcast. I thought, I've always wanted a talk show. I've always wanted to write a book, and I've always wanted a talk show. I just thought those were things that I was meant for. And I said, I'm so interested tell me more. Well, they had reached out because they wanted me to do a podcast about business and leadership and culture and employee engagement and all that work that I had been doing for 20 years. And I said, which was at the moment kind of shuttered, and I had started to move into this divorce world. And I told her, I said, I don't want to do that podcast, and I've never wanted to write that book. But can I do a podcast about divorce? She said, tell me more. I said, yeah, I want to do a podcast about divorce, and I want to call it The Good Divorce Show. And I want to have real people come on the show to talk about their good experiences, because they're out there. People who had divorce celebrations, people who were able to support each other in a way that didn't destroy the family on the way out the door. People who discovered themselves in new ways post-divorce. Like, all we ever would show, mostly, TV and celebrities, and what we hear about is all the drama and the bad. And I always say divorce isn't what damages kids. It's adults behaving badly. That's what damages kids. So they said yes. And I started the Good Divorce Show under the umbrella of a production company called Voice America. And did that for a year, and realized when I was in the host show seat, it was really highlighting my guests. But I was getting more and more opinionated about the divorce industrial complex, how we're doing it wrong. As I started working with families more formally, I was just learning and discovering so much. And I wanted a platform to talk about my ideas and thoughts about the divorce world. So then I hired a company, Interview Connections, and they're a podcast booking agency, and asked them to put me in the guest seat. So over the course of a year, I did 30 interviews, and mostly on divorce-related, divorce-adjacent podcasts. But it gave me an opportunity to really hone my language and my passion, and I'm an extrovert. So if it's coming out my mouth, that's how I'm figuring out what I actually think. It was really beneficial. Then comes the next little wink from the universe. And I get an email on April 26th, 2024. Remember that date. Hey, Karen, I loved your interview on the Wise and Worthy podcast talking about handling divorce with heart and smarts. Your way of guiding couples is a total game changer. You're really making waves in a tough space. It's awesome to see you bring light to such a tricky journey for families. Searching on Google and Amazon, I wasn't able to find any books authored by you, which was a bit surprising. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, executives, and consultants to help them grow their businesses through thought leadership, specifically by writing helpful books targeted at their ideal customer base. Let me know if writing a book is something you've ever thought about. It would be awesome to connect with you. And I immediately thought it was a scam. And I didn't respond. I thought, oh, well, that's great, but it's just one more person in my pocket. And who knows, everybody's got a thing going on. Well, he wrote again a couple weeks later, hey, Karen, I wanted to follow up with another email because I didn't hear back from you. My previous email is below. Can you give me a quick yes or no? That was on May 6th. Finally, 20 days later, again, now May 26th, Andy Earl, who is the founder and president of Write It Great, and they're an elite ghostwriting firm. And he makes one more swing. So it's been a whole month. I've been putting him off and ignoring him. Hey, wanted to reach out with one final email and see if it catches you at the right time. If you haven't noticed, I'm very interested in working with you on a book. You really seem to have a unique perspective, and I think it's a refreshing viewpoint. Readers would resonate with a book from you, in my opinion, and my team would knock it out of the park if you give us a chance. Hope everything is going well with you. Okay, Andy Earl at Write It Great. Here's your opportunity. So I got on the phone with them, and we had a couple of phone calls, and then I met their team. And, there was this kind of shame around like the ghostwriter industry. But the way that I started to think about it is if I wanted to build a house, right? Like everyone says, oh, I'm going to build a house someday. Well, I'm certainly no architect. I'm not going to write the blueprints, and I'm certainly no contractor. I'm not going to actually build the house. I have a vision, and I need to work with professionals to build the architecture and to know the tools and to point me in the right direction based on my vision. So I ended up partnering with Write It Great to write a book proposal, which I don't have here. I had it bound and printed. It's like 15 pages. We wrote the first chapter. Well, let me tell you how the book proposal got written. And this just happens to be the approach of Write It Great. They sent two authors. They flew two authors to my hometown, to Missoula, Montana, to spend 2 full days just squeezing my brain, which is kind of luxurious because it's a hairball in there. And so having the two of them recording interviews, Andy piped in. We looked at comparative titles. Is this a memoir? Is it a how-to? It's certainly about divorce. What would it be called? What's the marketing plan? How am I positioned in the market? Do I have a following? And then the whole first chapter and an outline of all the chapters in the book. So in 2 days, we did sort of a vision casting exercise. And sure enough, I think there's a book there. And then they came back and they said, okay, we typically work with authors over the course of 3 months to now flesh this out and actually write those things that we kind of have these guardrails or signposts. I said, I cannot afford you for 2 months or for 3 months. I can afford you for 2 months. Can we push it through? I think I come with a lot. I feel like the ideas are really fleshed out. And, I'll bring a lot to the table. I do think of myself as a writer, a small W writer, but lots of ideas and lots of content. So that's what we did. And every week there would be some writing that would come my way. We'd get on the Zoom room. We'd talk through it. What would we change? Are we going in the right direction? I'd go back and I'd rewrite things. They would kind of just give me, again, these marks of like the shape and texture of that first chapter. And then I would go in and flesh it out with, my internal monologue. If there was dialogue that I wanted to include, all the textures of right, like the environment and the habitat of the ecosystem of the story, if you will. And they arrived. So that's Andy and I, April 26th, 2024 is when he started to knock on my door. Those two writers arrived in Missoula that fall over Labor Day in September of 2024. And by Thanksgiving, I had a book proposal. In fact, by the 1st of November, I had a book proposal. And I already felt like a huge success. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And I've taken classes about book proposals. I've got workbooks, the YouTube. But sometimes as a solo entrepreneur, I feel like I have hammer and nails and I can get the job done. And sometimes it's just great to hire someone who has power tools and a blueprint, and they can get you there faster. And that I could just feel like this was what I was supposed to do. And I had some people close in my life who actually helped support the investment to do that, because it's not cheap. None of this book writing stuff has been cheap. It's wildly expensive and very arduous and a lot of grind and super consuming. And you're going to hear about that whole journey through this series of podcast interviews and storytelling. So there we had, that was our goal before Thanksgiving, early November, there's a book proposal. And Andy was in a position, who wasn't formally my agent, but it was part of our agreement that he would go out and shop it. And he's just not my agent because he wasn't taking the cut of, anything that came out of an offer. Now, what's interesting is before we, went out to market, Andy outlined, you've got kind of several options of how to do this, Karen. Like you can go for Varsity, a traditional publishing deal. That's probably a big reach. Again, I'm never been published, not even an article in it. Well, Mama Load, Elke Governson published me. She's the first person who published me. I wrote an article about mothering. But, not published on the big scene. I don't have any following on social media and I don't participate. I don't send out a newsletter every week. I'm in a new space in this divorce consulting when I've spent 20 years as a business consultant, and I'm an unknown mom in Montana with some big ideas. So a traditional publishing deal is probably a bit of a reach. Then there's the hybrid option, which I'm no expert, but it's this combination of having a publishing support along with you putting more money in, and it's kind of a together thing and you push it out. Then there's just the self-publish, where you take it to a printer, you put your words between some pages, you put it on Amazon, you sell it at the back of the room when you're speaking, but you've got a book. Or you can just make an ebook and stick it on your website, hardly cost you anything, but at least you've got something to put out in the world. So I thought about all those options. And I was pretty excited about the book proposal. So I turned to Andy and his team and I said, well, I don't know why we wouldn't just start at Varsity and then go from there. Like let that door close and then the next door close. I'm a fan of Parker Palmer. He's a Quaker philosopher, and he has a great little book called Let Your Life Speak. And one of the things I remember from that book is him saying, it's not just the doors that are opening that show us the way, it's also the doors that are closing that bring us clarity. So I said, let's go kick open some big doors and see what closes. Well, Andy says, okay, I think we should go out and start shopping it. And I'm like, it's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, like nobody's going to be around. It's going to totally get lost. I was not thrilled about this idea of going out and shopping the book proposal heading into the holidays. And Andy said, well, sometimes that's the best time because it is kind of quiet. And all of those acquisition editors aren't going to have a stack of this many book proposals coming in. They're going to have like this many. And there might be someone who still needs to acquire a book before the end of the year. I'm like, oh, well, here I am learning about a thing I never knew about. Yep. Okay. I trust you. Go for it. Sure enough, on November, oh no, we already did that one. On November 22nd, so like right around, maybe right as we're heading into Thanksgiving. So he's already got it out there. And this woman named Amy is responding to her friend Leah because Andy sent the proposal to Leah. And Leah's like, not our bag, but passed it on. And Amy said, Andy, this proposal is exciting. As a lead memoir, we're covering more parenting and co-parenting. We're also covering relationships, so it's a really great fit for us. As a next step, I'd love to find time to talk with Karen and you, if you typically join these calls. Here's my link. Let's sign up. Have a great weekend. OMG. I mean, what? Like, and she's from Wiley Press, and the subprint is Josie Bass. So Andy wrote back to me, Karen, I wanted to share this exciting news with you right away. I was able to get an intro from an editor at Wiley who we are working with on another project, and she suggested their Josie Bass imprint because these big publishers have all these imprints. And they might be interested. So let's get a call booked with her for the first week of December. I would love to join. And before you get too excited, I have a few other editors who are reviewing your proposal as well. I got a great intro yesterday to another lead acquisition editor. So that's the first position in the world that I found or in the publishing world, lead acquisition editors. They're the ones who buy the books, who are kind of betting on the horses. And I am a totally unknown horse. So I'm so excited. And before Christmas, there's going to be a conversation. Like, it doesn't even matter what comes of it. It just immediately was assigned to me of, oh, there's something here that people at least there's a spark that they're interested. This message is worth putting out in the world. And then Amy got sick, canceled our meeting in December and said, I'll talk to you January 10th. I had 30 minutes to just sell myself and the project and why I cared about it, that this wasn't just a book, it was a movement. My background as a speaker. I want to set out and disrupt the divorce industrial complex. The book will be part memoir, part nonfiction, teaching things that we learned, and a call to action to disrupt the divorce industry. And I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to be your media darling. I will bust my butt on behalf of all of you. I know that you, Josie Bass, want to make $1, and I want to make a difference. And I think both of those things can happen. And that was it. And then it went silent. Because she said in that meeting, oh, I'm meeting with my team next week. We'll get right back to you. I've got a really good feeling about this. And then it was silent. And I got very nervous. And after almost 2 weeks, I sent a message to Andy. I'm like, is this typical? Did I get ghosted? Do we follow up? I don't know what's happening. Wah, wah. And he said, let me just make a little poke and see what's going on. And then, next magical moment. This was on January 30th. I get a long email from Amy. First and foremost, I owe you an apology. I loved our conversation a couple weeks ago and had every intention of following up that exact week. But it just this, blah, 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 all the things happen. But we hope that you will consider our offer. Oh my goodness. I have had one interview in less than 6 months. I mean, like, we finished the proposal the 1st of November. We started it in September. So 2 months to write it. And then in 30 days, they wanted an interview. We delayed that to the middle of January. And then I had an offer. With our unmatched level of partnership, tailored support and commitment to our authors, I know Wiley is the perfect home for you to publish this book, Karen. I look forward to hearing from you over the course of the next few days with your thoughts around the offer, timeline, and contract. I'm excited about the possibility of working together. I'm also more than happy to hop back on a call, blah, 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 talk about the project going forward, all those things. And right away, I write Andy and the team. Congratulations, Karen. This is so exciting. It might not seem like much, but even for them to offer a small advance, which they did, means they're really excited about the project. It is surprisingly hard to get an advance at all for a first-time author. So it's cool that they love the brand, The Good Divorce, and everything would align, and we love the tension that Good Divorce creates. Let's talk about next steps. And then I had an existential crisis. I don't know if that's what they call it, but I suddenly knew that I was facing something, really exciting, like a dream. It's kind of a unicorn story, and I'm a little embarrassed about it. And when I told one of my author mentors about what happened, and she was a New York Times bestselling author, she's like, even if I told someone it could go like this, Karen, I wouldn't believe it myself. So I feel incredibly blessed. And as I was talking with her, I'm like, I don't know if I can take this on. I can now see it's going to be really expensive and all the marketing's on my shoulders. There's this huge contract. I don't know what any of it means. Like I'm suddenly in the deep end and I don't have a clue. And I'm afraid I'm going to do damage to myself. And she just said to me, Karen, this book is chasing you. Stop running. People need this book. And she was the very last phone call. Thank you, Laura Munson. After having lunch with authors, hiring now a literary attorney, right? So now, so starts the money game. And reading through the 15-page contract, making changes back and forth, back and forth. It took me 6 weeks. And what was really crazy in the middle of all of this is I lost my voice. I got really sick in February and I couldn't talk, which hadn't happened since the end of my marriage. I lost my voice several times over the course of a couple of years, which I thought was very symbolic and interesting, which is no one's fault but my own, right? I'm in charge of my voice. But here I was just feeling like, oh, well, that's kind of appropriate. I'm about to go into the land of the written word, which isn't about my voice. And the other thing I did is I ran away to Maui and rented a van. I've always had this dream of like traveling and living in a camper van. That's not everybody's dream, but oh my goodness, it was absolutely my dream. And so I cashed in some miles, flew to Maui, rented a van for like $100 a day for a week, and really thought about, could I do this? Do I want to do this? Had a lot of big mentoring phone calls with people from the beach while I was there. It was magical. Love working in tropical locations, especially in the month of February. And I came back and I said, yes. And I spent those 6 weeks trying to figure out, do I want to do this? And then very quickly had to figure out, how am I going to do this? So stay tuned for part 2, and we'll talk about the how someone who's never written a book writes a book. Thanks for coming along for the ride. It occurred to me I should read a little section of the book, because that's what authors do. They read little parts of their book. So here we go. Chapter 4, The Kids. This is the opening reflection of that chapter called Having the Talk. In all my years of reciting lines and speaking in front of an audience, the hardest talk I ever gave was in our living room with 2 small spectators who mattered more than any audience I'd ever had faced before. When it was time to tell our children, I knew I'd need and want to think about what we were going to say before we had to say it. I didn't want to bumble through this, say the wrong thing, or do irreversible damage. The goal was to comfort them as we simultaneously began to tear their world apart. How to do that was a daunting mystery. One evening, after the kids were asleep, David and I once again sat at the kitchen counter, facing more divorce business. I held a legal pad for comfort, hoping that the words would forever change our family would magically appear on the page. We were navigating unknown territory and hoping our instincts would show the way. By the end of the night, the yellow pages of the legal pad were splotched with tears and empty words. We had an outline, complete with who would start the conversation and who would wrap up. What came in between those moments was nebulous and dependent on the kids' reactions. Our kids were only 5 and 6 years old, so finding the age-appropriate language was important. Did they even have an understanding of divorce? Would they cry, get angry, run out of the room? I was filled with guilt, concern, and fear, all at the same time. I dreaded the conversation, and I also wanted to get it over with so I could stop thinking about it constantly. The nights were restless, sleep was elusive, and my days filled with fog of the unknown. It was hard to keep pretending around the house that everything was business as usual. My mind whirred, wondering if I would manage to navigate the conversation without totally breaking down. It seemed important that I keep it together so my kids wouldn't feel the need to comfort me or follow my emotional lead. I waffled between feeling incredibly guilty for what I was about to do and sturdy in my conviction that divorce was what our family needed. The curtain was about to rise on our new family structure. The script was written. The stage was set. Now we just needed the courage to deliver our lines.